All right, welcome back. This is part two of the interview with A Life Allah, and we have a special topic today. We're going to do a deep dive of this system called Spire, The City Must Fall. If you want to learn about this system, this is the person to listen to. So, before we dive into the book, I want to ask you, how did you encounter this book in the first place? Where did you come across it? And kind of what's your history of running it? And yeah, let's go ahead.
I got introduced to Spire via the artwork of the artist for Spire, which is Greg Howard. And I think I can't remember exactly which class it was, but I saw a picture of a particular class on Twitter, and then it gave like a short paragraph summary of like one of the abilities of this class. And I was
Mm,
like, oh, that's bananas. And so from there, I went back to um, the Twitter holder, which was the publisher of Spire, and I saw all the character classes. I was like, oh my goodness, And then from there, I went to the website. I read a little bit, about the setting, and I was like, man, this seems like something I could go with. I ordered the
yeah.
book, and I was not prepared. I just thought I was. I wasn't prepared at all. I fell in love with it instantly. I instantly tried to read up everything I could read about of it online. I worked overtime to get all the books and everything, and from there, I needed to run it. I just
Yeah.
needed to, and
Well,
I actually ran my. So I was away from tabletop role playing games for a while, even before the pandemic.
mm,
Where a lot of people became introduced to a lot of role playing games, D&D specifically, to a lot of the live plays that was happening during the pandemic. That wasn't me. I was too pretty much traumatized by the pandemic to even like link into those, right?
mm,
So even before the pandemic, I had spent a few years away from tabletop role playing games in general. Um, this brought me all the way back in, and when I started my new job, there was one woman there who was interested in playing role playing games, and from there, I built the core of people who became, players of Spire. And the majority of them, in fact, only one of them had played tabletop role playing games before in their life.
mm.
He played D&D, and the rest of them were not even familiar with tabletop role playing games, and they loved it. They loved it. In
Nice.
fact, we've gone on and played different other systems, but this group is like, yeah, so we need to go back to Spire. We need
Yeah.
to go back to Spire. So my next major endeavor is to run a long campaign utilizing Spire.
That's
Yeah.
great. I had the when I read through it the first time, and this is all based on your recommendations and your content, and I had a similar reaction. One of the things that caught my eye, flipping through social media, was you were talking. I think it was the Azurite, which is the merchant character class, and just the artwork instantly was like, oh, this is something to pay attention to. Like, this is so that was the attention grabber, and then you were talking about all these different character classes, and I was like, oh, this is something different. And then I bought the book and I read through it a couple of times since then, but it had the same feeling. Like back in the 90s, I had been playing D&D forever, and then I played Vampire the Masquerade, and it
Mhm.
was such a paradigm shift. And it's like, oh, I didn't know TTRPGs could do this
Right.
specifically, and I had not had that feeling until I read Spire again. Like this is probably the second time this sort of shifted my thinking in what TTRPGs are, what they
Hmm.
can do, and what sort of experiences you can have. Um, that are just sort of transcend kind of the standard D&D fantasy ideals.
Right.
So yeah, I love it. I'm so glad you're here to talk about it. Let's do this. So
Yeah,
this is the cover. This is the cover. This is the PDF here, but the book is basically the same thing.
yeah,
This is the cover, and it says it all, doesn't it? Like
yeah,
it's got the artwork, and you know exactly what this game is like as far as the vibes go.
right. And I
Yeah.
think we had a part of this talk in the first discussion that we
Mm,
had, which is that the consistent art throughout here um, really, really nails and defines the tone. And it's something to think about for anybody who's game creating,
mm.
like to get a solid artist who can really, really execute your vision and be
Yep,
consistent throughout is really a key part in selling your world. You know?
that's right. For sure. And this is the master class in how to do that. It's and just the way the whole book is organized too. Like you don't need, there are other resources, there are other
Mhm.
materials for this, but if you just get this, you have everything you need. It's lore,
Yeah,
character classes, it's got an adventure in the back.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to flip through some pages here, but let's
Mhm.
get to, yeah, there it is. Look at that.
Woo. Yeah.
Let's talk about the art real quick. So one of the things I notice about it,
Mhm.
and maybe I'd like to hear your perspective on this. I know one of the things I noticed is there are no curved organic lines. Everything is jagged. And I
Yes.
wonder, do you think that, I mean, that's got to be intentional. They've had to have made that choice. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about like how that choice to make all these jagged edges is reflective of the setting and reflective of the game experience.
I think it's very, very reflective in terms of, you know, this is it's crazy because it essentially is a urban city adventure while at the same time being a dungeon adventure.
Mm,
And you usually have either or in terms of playing, like in D&D, right? Either you're in the city doing some stuff in the city or you're going off to a dungeon, right?
mm,
But these are kind of both collapsed in the arcology of Spire. And Spire itself is built with those dimensions also.
mm,
They're very, very straight, angular lines. It's not a curve or anything to it.
mm,
So it definitely gives the feeling, the resonance in terms of just like structure, institution,
mm.
um, all those hard kind of lines,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
It feels
Definitely.
oppressive just to look at the images like this. It feels oppressive. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
which is what
coloring
the
also,
setting
the
is about.
shade,
Yeah.
yeah, the shade, the muted shades in terms of the colors for the pictures
Yeah.
also. All
That's right. Yeah, there's no vibrancy. It's all just a little muted.
yep.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the setting. I'm going to jump ahead, but we can go back to that map later, but this is
Ooh,
Spire right here, right?
yeah.
So go ahead and could you please break down the setting because that's what this is all about, right?
And it's crazy how much the setting is a character, right?
Yeah.
Like the setting is technically the big bad, you know. Um,
Right.
Yet the great thing about Spire is you're never going to beat the big bad. You're never going to, you know.
Right.
Um, but they offer you enough things that you can and will accomplish that can still give you satisfaction. And I
Mm,
think that's a beautiful type of way to be able to execute that in a game, and it's very hard to do, you know.
mm,
But
mm,
they really do. So Spire is basically what's called an arcology. It's an encased city. Um, its exact dimensions are never given, but it is huge, right? So the way that I like to describe it is that think of something that's several times the height of the Empire State Building, and then each floor level is like a borough of New York on top of each other. Boom,
mm.
boom, boom.
So you
And
got like
that is kind
Brooklyn,
of
Bronx, Manhattan.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Definitely Manhattan will be all the way at the top.
That's right. Yeah, we have to
You
get to
know,
that part of the setting too.
you
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
and
yeah.
And so, like, it's reflective, right? Like, it's reflective in terms of that kind of hierarchy, that
Right,
top-down hierarchy in terms of oppression. So,
right.
the oppressors live at the highest point. Well,
Mhm,
not technically the highest point that's not on the roof, um, and exposed to light. And the most oppressed members of the society live on the bottom, you know. But
mm,
it's not like a even tier. Like basically all the way until you get to the top is going to be some form of major oppression,
mhm.
you know.
That's right.
And,
And
and the
yeah,
land,
yeah,
and so everything happens inside Spire. No
yeah,
adventures, nothing happens. Things are happening outside of Spire, but all game adventures and everything take place within Spire.
that's right.
And that I think is incredible too, because they're able to pull that off. You can literally have
Look at
endless
that vision.
adventures inside of Spire. Um, because as I said, it's literally the combination city dungeon.
Yeah.
You know,
The city is
oh,
the
these are
dungeon.
all the different levels.
That's right.
You know, let me pull out my book too, so I can
Okay.
follow right along
Right, don't have to zoom in.
with
Yeah,
the
the top
level.
floor is literally called New Heaven, right? It's like,
Wow. Um, wait, but okay, yes. What's funny is I'm originally from I live on North Haven right now,
oh,
and I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. So like,
can't get away from it.
all these things, But yeah, the top level, like you said, is New Haven, and
Yeah,
the funny thing about that is that technically that's on the outside. That's technically like up there with the roof, right? So
mm,
this is where you have, you know, wow, these are all different character classes here. But this is basically where there's a lot of disposal of the dead. There's different religious casts that are up there.
mm,
They have like basically the towers of silence that are similar to uh ancient what's it? Gosh, it's ancient Zoroastrianism. So towers of silence are in Zoroastrianism faith where um fire was so sacred that you wouldn't use it to
right.
even burn, your dead. So
Mm,
basically, it's huge towers. There used to be towers of silence, where basically birds came and picked the bones clear.
that's
You
right.
know, so there's different of these things here. This map is just incredible, though. But like, so it in each level, it said that the next level that's up there is the solar basilica, and that's where a lot of the religious stuff happens. You know what?
Right.
I'm gonna come back to the map. You know why?
Okay.
Because I'm seeing all of these different classes in
Yeah,
terms of, and what's interesting is the classes inform us a lot about the structure
that's right.
of Spire, and many of
Mm,
the classes also, which we can also refer back to the maps. Many of those classes have I should say, a stronghold or a spot where they're the most
that's right.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
prolific at.
So it's like this is where they're most active, and or they're maybe they're down here, or like the blood witches come out of the heart, right? Like
Right,
yeah, yeah.
right.
We should also mention who are the oppressors and who are the oppressed. All of the players. This is where it comes to the left. Like if you just explain this, that would be
Uh-huh.
cool. But here's the twist on it: is
Right,
that
right.
they're all elves,
All elves, all
all
elves.
elves.
And what's great about um, they took more. I don't want to say it's D&D lore, um, but certain things that are D&D lore are in the public domain,
Mm,
and that's what's interesting to me. So I didn't realize that how much in terms of like drow, the relationship to spiders and stuff like that's definitely something that was, incubated in D&D.
For sure.
right,
That's a Forgotten Realms thing,
right.
straight
And
out of
so I
Forgotten
didn't
Realms.
realize that that kind of stuff is still kind of, for lack of a better term, public domain because they
That's
did
right.
their own spin on it here,
Right. That's right.
with a lot of these things. But so the drow elves, so you're only playing as a drow elf. That's the
Right.
first thing.
Everyone's a drow. Everyone in the
Everyone's a
game.
drow
Every all
at
the
this point,
players are drow. There
all the
are other
players.
elves.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Alfir are the high elves. They are the oppressors. Now, in terms of the geography of the land, they're from the north,
Hmm.
and they have this crazy. Think of Jardis, the Ice Queen from the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That is your quintessential
There you go.
um, Alfir elf. You know, this kind of connection to cold, and almost like a necessity, like it's to
Right.
them almost like air.
Yeah.
Um, and this is reflective in terms of once we get to Spire, like the level that the Alfir normally are on, like they have artificial like ice making machines where the streets are filled with ice sheets and it's kept artificially cold. And so, like I said, it harkens back to all this Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where she had the eternal winter and stuff going on.
Mm.
Um, but they came from the north to Spire. Now, the funny thing about Spire is, once again, the lore is so deep, but nothing is canon. you know, so
Right.
it could be this, it could be that. Spire existed there. No one really knows, specifically who built it, why it's there.
Right.
And so that lives part, to a long-term mystery you can do
Right.
if you're doing, a
I
long-term
think
campaign
there's
and
a
stuff.
yeah, there's like a
Mhm.
page, maybe it's later on in the book, but there's a page that lists out all the possible theories of
Yeah.
where Spire comes from. And some of them are crazy. Some of this is like Spire is just a consensus reality of like just really
Yes.
weird stuff. And then the last one on the list is just like it's just there, okay? Like it's
Yes.
just there. So,
And
and no one knows. There's all this ambiguity, all this ambiguity in everything.
but they do it in such a way, and this is why we have to really, really give this like acknowledgement to how they put this together.
Mhm.
Because they do it in such a way where it's still coherent,
Yeah.
right? It's not just like it doesn't come off like a laundry list of like, oh, these just weird stuff we're just going to. There is still this underlying like connection that holds it all together. And I'm still not too sure what it is, but they do it right.
That's a great
You know?
point. I think one of the things that is going on is that the designers had a very clear creative vision about it, and they were very confident that they picked their lane and said, like, this game is not going to be for everyone,
Right,
and it's some people are just not going to want to play this, but we think
right,
this is an amazing idea and we're not going to apologize for it. And here
right.
are the very specific themes: this and this and this. I think, let me see if I can find that page where they talk about can't find it. There's a page where they just talk about like who you are, things to know, the things to know page, which is page 16, which just sets I think they just that's where it's the clarity of vision is probably holding everything together. And so you can get away with, and I think some of the ambiguity is intentional. Like when you live in
Yeah,
a if you lived in this giant city, the unknowable is part of the oppression, right?
right.
Um, yeah, but it says things like, it says things like you're gonna die, like you're gonna die
Yes,
in doing this. You're not gonna win.
right.
Your family member. So we should mention the ministry too, right? So the
Oh,
players are
yeah.
not only Drow, but they have been recruited by these people called the ministry. And
Yeah.
there's two goddesses, right? There's the goddess of the bright moon, and then there's
Mhm.
the goddess of the dark side of the moon. And the
Oh,
dark side of
correction.
the right. So
There's
they're not you're
3.
not supposed to. Oh, there's three.
Yeah. And you know what?
I might have missed
I
that
don't think
third
no,
one.
I don't think the 3rd one is mentioned in Spire.
Oh, really? Oh, that's probably yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk
Uh-oh.
about that too. Yeah, there's a
Okay.
3rd one, and
That's
it gets into
another
the triple
level.
goddess kinda thing.
So the players are all resistance fighters.
Right.
and they get recruited, and getting found out by being in the resistance is going to hurt everyone in your family, all your friends. So, and they would rather turn you in. So that's
Yep.
something you have to be careful about.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really interesting. Yeah, it's just really fascinating. And it's like, again, it's like very clear. This is what the players are. This is what they're going to be doing. Here's what the campaign is.
Right. And that also comes across, or mechanically, they made sure that to develop bonds.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so it really, so a bond is, depending on your class, you have a particular bond with a particular type of character, right?
Mm,
And you get more than one bond, you know. So for instance, you know, you might have a bond to like um, a street merchant, or you might have a bond to someone who works for the authorities or things like that, and the bond is defined in a certain type of way.
mm,
But what it does is that you everybody starts the game with two assumptions. One, you all know each other because you all are part of the same cell,
mm.
and you guys don't, because there's different cells. Your cell doesn't know any of the other cells. Okay. Um, so that's one assumption
That's
that
right.
we start with. The second assumption that we start with, outside of you all knowing each other, is that you have these particular bonds. And narratively, what that does, it sets up a nice little flow chart, you know, that you can have, you know, to play characters against each other, to play them in certain directions and things like this. And I think that it's a necessary thing, but it's important. It's more important that they actually provided you with a tool to make it happen.
Right.
You know?
And in story wise, those bonds can be exploited. They are a source. They could be a source of strength, but they could be a source of weakness. Like you always have to be very mindful of your bonds, and it's just baked into the system, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
and so sometimes if you, we'll get to that when we get to some mechanics, but some of the mechanics in terms of some of the things, your bond could be broken,
right.
you know, or you can lose connection to a bond, you know, due to certain actions and stuff that you take.
Right. The other thing that I think sets this game apart was the top of this first thing on the list, on the things to know list. It says subvert, don't destroy. So
Mhm.
you are resistance cell, but your your thinking, your line of thinking isn't just, okay, let's go assassinate this police officer, this police chief in this area, because even if you do that, they're just going to get replaced by someone just as bad or maybe worse. So your
Exactly.
missions are revolving around, instead of trying to just break things and burn things down, is to subvert the system by turning them people to your side by any means necessary. It doesn't mean charming them. It can mean blackmailing them, right? It
Yes.
could be like strong arming them
Yes.
into really ways. So it's not a D&D campaign where you're just running through a dungeon fighting monsters. You really need to think about your targets and think about your mission, and it's
Right.
not always going to be about combat. It's going to be about subterfuge and kind of all the infiltration and social manipulation. It's a very, very different character.
And it's also reflective in the classes, right?
Right,
So like there's not, even though you have a fighter S class in the knight, he's still not a tank.
right,
You know, like he still is framed within certain norms and mores and stuff that he has to in order to keep face and different things like that. Um, and you don't have basically any of the magical class having like fireball. You know,
right,
there's
right.
magic
No,
isn't flashy, you know,
right.
but it is weird.
It's
Magic here is
weird.
weird.
Yeah, we'll get into these classes real soon. Like, let's get into that, because that's the spotlight of the whole thing, and I think it'll help all the listeners really get their head around what this game is about. But
Yeah.
real quick, The core one of the things when people are trying to get out of D&D or try something else, the resistance is always, "Oh, I don't want to learn another system."
Right.
Okay. The thing is that this is easier than D&D. Like it's
Yes.
just straight up easier than D&D.
Yes.
Could you break down the core mechanics for us?
It's a D10.
Yeah.
Okay. That's your die. And
Yep.
you're basically what we call you have dice pools.
Mm,
Okay. Um, Certain things are going to be rated in terms of the difficulty that you're going to need to accomplish it. You're going to have to reach a certain number. Um, in order to be successful, you will have what's dice pools. And so, depending on your attributes, your certain expertise in certain areas, your class, different dice will be added to your dice pool. It doesn't come up with a bigger number,
mm,
okay? But it gives you the probability that you'll be able to hit the higher number,
right. If
if that
you
makes sense.
Yeah, if you are really good at something, instead of rolling just simply 1d10, you'll roll like
Mhm.
3d10. And then you just
Exactly.
take the highest one. That's it.
Yep.
Like you don't have to there's no math. Just take out of
Nope.
those 3, you take the highest one. And if you got a
Right.
10, you're very very successful. If you got an 8 or 9, you did it. If you got a 6
Yep.
or 7, you are successful, but it comes with stress or some other
Yes.
complication. And if it's a
Yes.
5 or under, fail, and if it's a 1, it's a really bad failure. And that's
Yes.
it. Like that's
And
the
and and
mechanic.
and that's the mechanic. And it is hard to explain to D&D people because they're looking for 50 other mechanics.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not there. The other great thing about this is that the system for stress is easy once you understand it to replicate across the board.
Right.
So technically, it is the same system by which you will incur physical damage, psychic damage, or even damage to your purse.
Social
It
damage too, your
Yes, so
reputation. Yeah.
it's all the same mechanic and same thing. So you don't have to learn something different for over here. So
Right.
for instance, if you are trying to um, sell something illegally, right? And you fail and you get stressed. What does that look like? It could look like, you're accumulating little stress, and then when you reach a certain threshold, boom, you get fallout.
Mm.
And that's when it goes bananas. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you
Just
accumulate
remove.
enough stress, like, oh, if you were, let's say, an Azurite, oh, your fence doesn't is not going to buy from you anymore because you're too hot.
Right.
You know, um, it goes all once for magic, it just goes bananas. But like the
Yeah.
same kind of things that you get like backlash from casting spells, that would just cause weird things, man. I mean, and we can go into some of the stresses for the specific classes, because I think it's really some of them are kind of cool actually.
That's a
And
great point. The classes have their own specific. There's a generalized, like reputation or silver or psychic or blood or whatever. But the classes also have their own unique brand of damage that they can take. Basically, you don't really
right,
have like one single HP score. You've got stress. The other thing
yeah,
that I thought was really cool about this system is that the narrator, the game master, keeps track of the stress, and they don't
yes,
tell you. They're not supposed to tell
yeah,
the players how much stress you have. And
woo,
that's part, it goes back to that ambiguity. Like you don't know, you've taken some, but you don't know really how bad it is. So you always got to be on
yeah.
guard.
It was. I remember one of them. What was one of them? I think the Blood Witch had a fallout where they were scared of right angles.
Right. It's like
Yeah, it was
it's
bananas.
like that OCD like has a problem with. There's another one that has like can't handle a door being partway open. It either has to be completely closed or completely open. I think that's
Yeah,
one of the masks has that as one of
yeah,
theirs. Like there's so many
yeah. Like,
crazy. It's just so cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that just adds another like nice little flavor to the game because you are still very much on a mission and you got to get this mission done, right? Um, and then all this stuff just comes from left field. And you're like, oh, what? You know, we we had some banana things happen in our campaign, and yeah, I'm looking forward to, just like I said, like really, really um running long campaigns,
Mm,
introducing it to more people. As I said before, there's a couple of homebrew classes I want to, also put at the table for me, and have that too. And so, yeah, I
yeah.
can't talk enough about it, and I want everybody to experience it.
Right. So hopefully we've sold everyone on the idea of it. But I think if just to seal the deal,
Mhm.
let's get into these character classes. So yeah,
Woo! Oh,
equipment, armor, it's all there. Here's the bonds.
right,
Fallout from the bonds. Combat's pretty simple.
yeah.
There's nothing really complicated. There's got
And that's
example
what makes
fight.
it great, because it's not a combat oriented game,
Right,
and I let people know that up front, but it is still going to give you just as much fulfillment, you
right.
know.
Because you're
And then
always.
also, we
Oh,
should
sorry,
also
go ahead.
mention that besides the high elves and the drow, there's actually three other groups of people who are within or around the periphery of Spire.
Mm,
So the first is that there are humans.
right.
They're from the east, um, and there's a few of them that are in Spire. Spire is having basically a war to the south with the Knolls. And so that's the other group that is within the world of Spire. Knolls technically are not in Spire, but there may be a few in the lower parts, under a
Mm,
whole bunch of robes and stuff like that,
right.
you know. But they are also, once again, it's very, very interesting about Spire, because um, it also you also start to understand some of just the dynamics of propaganda and stuff like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Knolls, everybody at Spire thinks they're horrible, right? But
Right.
is this just the propaganda that's coming from the high elves because they're
Right.
the ones who are in battle with them, you
Right.
know? And then even amongst Spire, even amongst the Drow, it mirrors very much society. So, like, even though there's groups that are oppressed, that within the oppressed groups, there still are bad people, right?
Right.
There's still a bad people. There still are people who would sell out everybody in the oppressive group in order to be with the oppressors. You
Right.
know, there's those who are in the oppressive class that are so far removed from the rest of Spire that they don't know what's going on.
That's
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
um, all those different kind of things. But you only play as a drow.
Only drow. There's something that maybe you could clarify for me on the lore a little bit. I was
Mhm.
reading that there are other drow that live outside of Spire. And if I was reading it correctly, I think that there's like a civil war going on
Yes,
between drow groups. And a lot of the residents of Spire are refugees from this civil war. So there's
yes,
these other drow out there that if they stop fighting each other, they could
ex-
liberate Spire, but they're too
yes.
busy fighting themselves.
Yes, and in fact, I think we'll get into that in the Vermisian Sage.
Oh
But I
yeah,
think,
yeah, those are cool.
yeah, one of their abilities is to connect you through your lineage to some of these different royal houses of the Drow.
Right.
And actually, something I'm working on creating, because in one of the books, Sin, I think they talked about it, is that they have a card game that they play that basically enacts some of the highlights of ancient drow battle history and stuff, but it's utilized not only as a game but as a tool for divination.
Mm,
So I want to create that game in game. So
that would be
I've been
really
thinking about
cool.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great idea. All right, we do this. Oh, one Durance, right? Is there? That's
Ah,
one little last piece of lore.
no,
Durance
yeah,
is. Can you explain that?
that I think that's really important, because durance is a form of slavery.
Right.
We're going to call it what it is. Durance is a form of slavery. Um, and so, whenever you're dealing with any elements of slavery within a TTRPG, there's certain ways that I feel it should be framed. And I think that they got it as close to how it should be framed as possible.
Mm,
Meaning that every drow at a certain age is put in servitude to an Alfir. Um, Depending on where you are in the society, depending on the connections you get, you'll have a particular type of durance. Some durance you just may be cleaning up around their house. You know, Other durance you're working in their factories. You know, um, but each person has a each of the characters had a durance. Um, I think it's for 2 years. I don't remember exactly
yeah, it's
how
like
long.
two or maybe four. I can't remember.
Okay. So
Yeah.
all the characters that you're playing them post durance. And so part of your description or character creation is that you're going to decide what kind of durance that you had, and
Mm,
that's really just to place yourself in relationship to the Alfir. Once
mm,
again, like the whole structure of the foundation in terms of character creation is, where do you fit into Spire? Where does your character fit into Spire? And that's unlike, you know, general D&D, right? Like many times
mm,
we created a character. It wasn't like, how does this character fit into this city? How does this character, like if I created a cleric back in the day, um, I didn't also create how the cleric fit into the whole structure
right.
of the religion. You know,
Right.
there were tools for that. I might say like, hey, he don't like that priest or something. You
Right.
know, but there are mechanics here to place relationships, um, and also for the durance. Also, as I said before, it's slavery. It's not chattel slavery, um, and it's also as like I say like veils and lines. It references slavery
Mm,
without you having to role play it.
right.
So the durance happened. We know it happened. We
Right.
know that junk is garbage. You know, but this is part of the story. But we're not going to do trauma porn over here. We're not going to have you play
Yeah.
through this part of slavery. So I think on that level they get it right. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah, and they explicitly say that, and they say that on one of these pages here. I think right, maybe it's this next page here, right after this. Yeah, that's right. There's this section here on page 39. This basically specifically says that it's like, this isn't the story that we want to tell. If you want to tell
right,
that, that's your business, but that's not this game. This game is
right,
this. And yeah, I think that makes it a lot more playable, and it's gonna help people, um, and maybe enjoy isn't the right word, but just really get into the game and explore it properly without being traumatic, as
right.
as it could have been. They could have fumbled the ball on that, and yeah, I think you're right. I think they
And I
didn't.
think it's also important to have the right game master to run things like
Yeah.
these, right? Like there's I really didn't realize it until I got older, but there's a certain group of people in general in the space who want to play out horrible things just to play out horrible
Yeah.
things.
Right.
Just to say that they have the freedom to do it and just to do it. And they attract a certain type of crowd to them too. And it just
Mm.
like you guys are
Yeah.
literally just playing trauma porn.
You
So
got to come
no,
in with the right mindset,
right,
about what this game is, what it is, who you are. You have to have a certain level of maturity and
yes,
thoughtfulness.
right,
Otherwise, this game's just not for you. You should just not play it. Like, and
right,
you shouldn't
definitely,
allow players who don't get it at your table. Like, it's not for everyone.
right,
Yeah.
right. No,
Cool.
definitely.
All right. Classes. Who
Woo-hoo.
who do we have here? Who-
As we said before,
yeah.
um, if I haven't, of course, I haven't played it because I've been the pusher, so I'm the
Right.
one who's running it. But I said that if I was to play, this would be the class that I would play.
Yeah, I said that too, actually. It's
Yes,
exactly the same one. is these guys? Who are these? These are the Azarites, aren't they?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Azarites, you know. So they are a combination. So what's also interesting about Spire is that many of the classes you can see if you have familiar with D&D, you can relate them to another class, right?
Mm,
They're a take on these particular classic D&D classes. And what the Azerite and many of the classes here, honestly, are a lot of them are clerics, a lot of them are, magic users. You know, Technically the Azerite would be a cleric,
mm,
right? It would be a cleric because they worship, you know, a deity who is, the deity of, commerce,
right.
well, but the great thing about this is that they attach a utility to this, whereas that what would someone who worships a deity of commerce really be like? And this is where you have the aspects of the merchant come out, the banker come out,
Right.
and it actually becomes a very stylized cleric, you
Right.
know, and then the language, their abilities translate into basically different ways that involve money,
Right.
but money and magic,
Right.
and that's what I
And
love about it.
connections, the business connections. Do you so you have the book
Yes,
on you right now?
yes,
Okay.
yep.
Can you look at page 41, I think it is, and the core abilities? Like I think if we go through the core abilities for each of these classes, it'll really uh kind of illuminate on the flavor of each of these classes.
Yeah,
There's cut a deal and heart's desire are their two core
yeah,
abilities. Yeah.
yeah. So, like, these are great because this is also an easy way to keep track
Yeah.
of things during a game session. Many of the class's abilities, um, they're able to do once per session. So that's you don't need like a billion and one different trackers or thing like that. Like, hey, did that person use that ability tonight? You know? And so once again, a nice little mechanic that makes it easy for everybody,
Mm,
right?
mm.
So like cut a deal is, once per session, you set up a meet with an NPC who can acquire you pretty much anything available in Spire. All
Right.
right. It won't be free,
Nope.
and odds are they'll want a favor or a cut too. But talk about ways to not um, get the story stuck. What I mentioned a lot to the players is that Spire, the abilities and stuff inspire for every class. They have a lot of abilities that allow you not to hit a dead end.
Mm,
And what I call them is that they are tools for the characters to hack the narrative.
mm.
So you might feel that you're stuck, and then they come up with this. They come out of left
It's
field.
like,
You know,
yeah, I know a
this
guy.
is
I
the
know a
one.
guy, and here he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just like,
Yeah.
and then as a GM, it's like great because like now it's like okay, now I need to generate this kind of person. But you have a direction. You know,
Mm,
um, heart's desire, and you know what they want. Once per situation, pick an NPC that you can observe for a while. The GM will tell you what they want most of all right now. Once
powerful.
again, great
Powerful.
tool, right?
Yep.
Like great tool to like change the direction from where anything was going.
Mm.
The way that my players pulled me around was just incredible. It was incredible, but it was definitely lovely. The other thing that's great about Spire is it doesn't if you come from an OSR system, from back in the day and stuff, you were going to have to keep a laundry list of everything that you were carrying,
Right.
you know. But what it does here is it deals with an essential fact. You live in the city. You're not carrying a whole bunch of stuff around all the time.
Right.
So each character class, they'll have like different groups of like 3 items you can have. So like, you could have 3 of these items, 3 of these items. You'll have choices, but it'll be very, very limited.
Mm.
But that once again doubles back into like pure role play, you
Yeah,
know?
you don't even need to carry money. You just have a silver level. And like it
Yeah,
just assumes that you can pay for a certain thing. You're never it says explicitly you're never going to be rich. You cannot
right.
become rich. But, some people have a little more than others and Azurite's one of them. You know how money moves.
Exactly. And the other great thing about this system is that so each of the classes you have a low advance, medium advances,
Right.
and high advances. And these are basically, the ways that you level up,
Mm.
right? Um, but your level up doesn't have to sometimes it's non-linear. And what I mean by that is maybe you do something that will be determined that you get a high advance. And that
Mm.
might be the first advance you get is a high advance because you ended up pulling off something incredible, right?
Mm.
Or you might just get 2 low advances for something. There is no hard in the stone um, trajectory that you're supposed to go through in terms of to
Yeah.
advance.
Right, you're not counting up experience. I think the determining factor for whether you should get an advance or not is did you do something to change the city somehow, right?
Exactly.
It's the
Exactly.
social fabric of it, something physical, but did you change the city? And so now the players are heavily incentivized to role play and interact with the lore. A lot of games don't do that right. Even though they have good lore, they don't have mechanics for rewarding interaction with the lore. And this
Right.
does it perfectly.
Right. And what's so funny is that someone wrote something in terms of the article I wrote about um, designing a decolonized mega dungeon.
Mm.
Um, I don't deal with trolls. I just wait for the sun to come out and let them turn to stone. But like this person basically wrote is like, well, nothing in traditional D&D will prevent you from, you know, doing this. And it gets back to what you said. There's no mechanics that reward you for doing certain things.
Right.
And this is the issue that we had with first edition. You got experience by killing. You didn't get experience, by fully negotiating with the dragon. You had to kill the dragon
Right.
and you had to steal its gold, you know? And
Right.
so the mechanics are here to reward you for different types of activities and behaviors. And I think that opens up a whole new realm of things that you can
Mm.
you can do. Um, this this is the one in terms of the high advances for the Azurite. This is the one that sold me on the class when I saw this on Twitter, which was buy some time.
Oh yeah.
That's the one where it's expensive, but basically what you do is you can buy back your time and travel back a minute in time. And I was
Right.
like, who thought of that? I was like, what kind of brain do you have to, be on to like to think of that? But like everything here is about commerce and this is the way that you worship your God,
Right.
you know? And so it also the other thing which is great about Spire is that you then have to ask the questions for your character. Why is my character involved in, you know, this subversion, right? Because an Azurite, it seems like, oh, they just want to be where the money is. Well, yeah, and sometimes it's more
Mm.
profitable to fuel the rebellion. You get, more money off of the black market or things like that than you did by
Right.
normal channel. So I think that that's also interesting too. There, some of the classes you would think because they're part of the establishment that they would not rebel. But what we do know from history
Mm.
um, in literally every society is that when there's an oppressive government, literally people in every level of society, there's someone who is not okay with it.
Right.
You know, all the way at the top, right next to the person who's doing the oppression. It could be their sister, not okay
Right.
with it. You know,
Right.
And I think that
And
that's what we find um, inspire, and I think that that's a great reflection in terms of just like the
yeah,
real world.
for sure. Like, and that objection to the oppression can manifest in completely different ways depending on who you are. And Spire allows you to explore that. Yeah, they just nail it. Should we go on to the Blood Witch?
Let's go to. Oh,
The
you do have
blood.
the you have the blood witch in yours. You know what's so funny is that the first I don't have the older edition, but the older edition of the book didn't have the blood witch in it.
Oh, I see.
It came in a supplement, and I have that supplement. And then they put the blood witch in the newer editions of Sin. So I'm glad that you have the blood witch in yours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is the fifth anniversary that PDF that I got. Yeah. So
the blood witch is. So I had one of our characters play the blood witch, and
cool.
yeah, it was the blood witch is basically. I like to explain to people like you can imagine the aesthetics of the blood witch is basically uh gosh, I can't remember the exact name of the particular type of spirit um in Asian lore, but you know exactly where I'm going with the ring and all that kind of stuff. Um
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that
just
kind of
the
aesthetic
yeah.
is the blood witch, and the closest that I can explain the blood witch to people is they get their power through an infection in the blood, a
Right.
literal sentient infection in the blood. This is like a sorcerer on steroids. You know, like
Right.
and the blood witch is not okay. You know what I'm saying? Like the blood witch.
Right.
So there's a there is the sister system to Spire, which I do feel that I will jump down that hole just as deep as I am in Spire. I'm just trying to get my Spire settled, and I honestly see that these are comparable, compatible systems.
Mm,
And it's called Heart, the city underneath, or the city under.
mm,
And what I try to explain that what Heart is to Spire is it is basically Spire's version of the Underdark
right.
on steroids. Once again, on steroids. And so this infection, no one knows what this heart is under Spire. In fact, some at the top deny it even to exist. Is it a being? Is it organic? Is it trying to eat? What's the relation to crazy lore? But the infection that turns drow into blood witches comes from the heart,
From the heart.
you know, and they are literally. Um, I had a talk with a friend of mine a couple of years ago, and we were just talking about how, you know, many of these horror aesthetics get very sanitized in in media. You
Mm,
know, like we're now we were talking, about the sparkly age of vampires with Twilight and everything,
right.
things of this nature, right? And we were talking about witches. We were like the whole big kind of Renaissance fair, wicked kind of witch, has kind of taken over the aesthetic. And I remember her saying this specifically to me, because we were talking about Slavic traditions of witches. She's like, witches deal a lot with people don't want to deal with the fact that witches deal with a whole bunch of uncomfortable body fluids.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, you are right. You're right. And I feel like the Blood Witch is clearly um, one of the greatest representations of a witch player class that I've seen
mm,
in any TTRPG.
yeah. Are you able to read some of the core abilities, or
Yeah,
should I pull that
let me
up?
see if I could.
Okay. I think I
Let me
can pull it
see.
up too if you want.
I'm trying to see which is the craziest one. Um, oh, there's a couple. One is the Night Terror.
Oh, right.
You have a
Yeah.
history of fear in the city of Spire. Once per session, when you meet an NPC for the first time, declare that they have tried to intervene in your affairs at some point in the past and failed. They are now terrified of you. with all the risks that entails. My Blood Witch did that.
Ooh.
Like, but the funny thing is, she was just playing around. She didn't even care. She just
Ooh.
wanted to play with that ability, and it was kind of incredible. Um, Echoes. You can taste the intricacies of a person in their blood. When you taste the blood of the creature, you will learn something interesting or surprising about their past or future. The blood must still be warm. The colder it is, the less accurate and more disjointed the visions are. Visions of the future are inaccurate at best and misleading at worst, but they will represent one potential future for the target.
Mm,
And once again, when we get into some of these other character classes, we're also dealing with multiple realities here in Spire too.
mm.
So
That's right.
you know, it, it's incredible. Um, this character is definitely seems to be like it would be like a loner. So once again, it's so interesting how these particular bonds and stuff are developed. Um, I wanted to look at some of their advances, and
Okay.
this is also the great thing about advances is um, you can have two people be the same character and turn up totally different. All right, because what happens is when you the when the game master declares that you can have it get an advance, you can take an advance from your class, but there's all these other general types of advances that you can take. And if you take them, you can make your character totally look different, you
Right.
know.
You could
Um,
be an entire party of blood witches, and each one of you would be different.
yes, yes. And it's even more um diversity than let's say you had two of the same type of wizards in D&D, right? You are only going to be able to pull from the exact same spell list,
Mm,
right? So you all at a certain point are going to mirror each other. You know, here there's other lists that everybody has availability to that you can add to your character creation, and I think that's another thing that
yeah.
they did right. They were able to create a system that allows for this kind of diversity, and easy to add on to, right? If you want to create your own custom kind of advances, you can do that too. Um, but it's very modular in that way, without being clunky.
Mm,
You know, I really like that
mm,
for the way that they were able to pull that off.
yeah.
Um, this is a low advance, but this she did this too, and this was pretty just gnarly. Artisanal spray.
Yeah.
uh,
That was crazy.
like you spit a curse in a thrice dead language, and stinking vitrolic black blood sprays out of a womb or orifice.
Ooh.
She loved to play that out. She was a menace, and
Oh
she
man.
also had a familiar like a crow. It was yeah, but she
Yeah,
got she got so much fallout so many times. It was
I
just
bet.
it was great. It was great. And once again, they get the tone right.
Mm,
So because like unless you really have, for let's say D&D, um, a DM who's very experienced, has a homebrew and stuff, you could play a necromancer, but there's really not that many tools to make that necromancer creepy,
mm,
right? A lot of it depends on role play of the particular character and of the player, and also depends on just how much homebrew stuff that the DM does.
mm.
This gives you the aesthetics right off the rip. You cannot play a blood witch in any other way
You
except
have
it
to
be creepy.
you have to be
Okay.
creepy and horrifying. Like all of
Yeah,
your powers are weird and not just weird, but they're horrifying
right.
like to actually
And
experience.
and the root of it is that not only are you infected with this blood disease, it's sentient.
Right.
It's
That's right.
sentient. And so there's a certain point that you start to ask, like, how much are your thoughts? How much you are this? this creature's thoughts. You know what I'm saying? It's like the venom symbiotes on like steroids.
Right.
But yeah, they give the tools for this to really be a witch class, which
Mm.
is actually what I is a not a flaw, but a I've always said that about people who try to create custom witch classes for D&D. I was like, they just come off as another type of magic user. I
Mm.
need the creepy factor,
Mm.
if it's going to be a witch,
Mm.
you know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Who do
man,
we have
the
next?
blood. Man.
This is The
And so
Bound.
the Bound is another great one.
Yep.
One of our characters, one of our main characters in the Spire section, she was of the Bound.
Mm.
Um, so the Bound, first of all, they live in a portion of Spire that's actually hanging off the side of Spire.
Right.
Imagine a shanty town that's built on the side of a
Right. Just right
skyscraper.
on the side of it.
That is where they patrol. This is where, they do their vigilante actions.
Right.
And so they are basically, once again, a combination between a rogue type character, while at the same time being a type of cleric too, because they deal another theme in Inspire is that there are a billion and one different gods. There's a billion and
Right.
one different gods for everything.
Right.
And so the bound are basically um they're vigilantes, but they're gods. The first gods who they um invest in is the gods of like their ropes, their small
Right.
weapons.
Right.
Because everybody who's in this town, I mean, this portion of Spire, they're always tied to something.
Mm.
So it's like, you go rock climbing and you're always secure. Everybody's always secured. So like ropes and all these things are very important. And so, knowing the gods of these things is very important. They just take it to another level where they can then invest, empower their weapons with these particular forgotten or small gods. And in
Yeah.
some cases, they're not gods, depending on your campaign like mine. There's also
Right.
entities here that you would classify as demons and other types of beings also.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bound is incredible. Their core um, abilities are surprise infiltration. Nothing can keep you out. And my
Oh yeah.
character, my player used this one, and this was just incredible. Once per session, insert yourself into a situation where you are not currently present, so long as there's some conceivable way that you could get in there. And so the party was split. The bound was by theirself. The rest of the party was getting the brakes beat off of them by these particular drow that were infested with this sentient demon drug.
Ooh.
And she declared it. And there was a window in the alley that she came bursting out like Batman. And
That's cool. I like it.
cinematically,
There it
thematically, I'm
is.
like, come on now. Like,
Yeah.
and she started to whoop ass too.
Love
you
it.
know.
The
Um,
art. Yeah.
and then also, like I said before, they have a bound blade,
That's it.
so like, they bind a particular god um within, you know, their blade, their hatchet, you know, and it's really, really an interesting class because once again, you have me personally, I have a lot of fun with it because low level you can run it like a warlock too,
Mm.
in terms of they also have to negotiate and renegotiate with this spirit that's trapped in
Right.
this weapon, you know. And there's also like a space um in the side of the city where like all these forgotten gods are, and you basically go in there and you go through this process of finding one, choosing one, binding one. Um, but they're a real, real, real fun character. They're like I said, they're really stealthy. That whole just notion in terms of just like, you know, them binding this particular god, it plays in so many different ways. Um, and her character was very, very essential to everything. I'm trying to look at some of their uh their advances. Oh wow. Okay. I was looking at their high advances too.
Oh yeah,
At their
okay. I
high
just went to
advance,
that page. Yeah.
yeah, they have oh wow. Okay, that's funny. The god of getting even. Your armor is a vengeful god. As secret of second skin, um, but a nearby enemy takes the stress you would have taken instead, and you refresh in D3. So
Mm,
basically, you're like doing this Fisherman King kind of thing where it's just like, you know, damage is not going to you, it's going to somebody else. And there's a lot of advances and stuff built around, you know, the relationship between them and the guy within their weapon and stuff. But like I said, as a stealth class, also they're incredible in terms of with ropes and things of that nature, you know.
mm.
So yeah, but they're also vigilantes too. this
Right.
class, this
Yeah, they've got
class,
a. They definitely have that kind of Batman vibe, don't they?
right? And she played it really, really, really good. This class right here,
These talk about creepy. These like this is the ranger class, sort of, right?
yes,
It's
yes,
kind of
yes,
that's the. I mean, you gotta. Yeah, we'll talk about the hyena that you get, right? Like, it's
yes.
right down here.
You know, so once again, we mentioned that Spire has is a city of gods and a city of many different faiths. And so within that, you have these two factions on how to dispose of the dead, right? And this is basically the heretic faction, which is the carrion priests,
Mm,
which, as anyone knows, are basically demonic hyena creatures. Um, Supposedly, the story is they kind of like got this faith from the nose, all right, and brought it here. So I really think about what these guys were on when they just came up with this stuff. So the way to heaven is you gotta get your dead body devoured by hyena. That's the way to heaven.
right.
That's the proper way to get to the afterlife. You know, and once again, this is, as I said before, this is how something can be inspired by something in the real world,
Mm,
but not disrespectful.
mm,
As I said before, in Zoroastrian faith, they used to have the notion where the body was devoured by vultures and stuff. Okay, it's kind of a play on that here. Your body, they believe that the proper way for you to dispose of the dead and you to get to heaven is that you have to be devoured by a hyena.
mm.
And some of them may or may not be cannibals. They may. Some of them may be. Who knows? You
Okay,
know. um,
it's definitely possible.
but so their particular death god is the charnel, and so they're particularly active on the top part of Spire. All right. The core ability is, first of all, you get a hyena.
Right.
You get a hyena pet. You know, who could obey basic commands. I mean, you start off with one. You start off with a
Mm,
hyena that can
right.
pretty incredible. You know, um, and lay of the land. You're a trained hunter, and others would do well to heed your words. So when you enter a dangerous situation, you can name up to three features or opportunities that your allies can take advantage of. The first time you or an ally uses an opportunity, they roll with a mastery. For example, cover with a good view of the
Mm,
battlefield, an exit, a badly guarded door, a stack of barrels, etc. And so
mm,
basically, you're going to have another die added to, the dice pool.
mm.
And that's just an incredible tactic.
Yeah.
You're going in, and this is also how, like, sometimes we don't, like I said, you don't have the mechanics for it, right? You can say that your character is a great tactician, right? But
Right.
what if the player isn't a good tactician? It's
Right.
not going to be reflective in their play in the game.
Right.
You know, this way you actually have a tool to enact that in the narrative play.
Mm,
And I think that's something that's great about um, Spire because, as I said before, many times we create these particular characters in D&D or whatever system, and we're not able to play it the way that they need to be played,
Mm.
right? Um, and so, like I said, giving these narrative tools are like incredible to me. Um, let's choose
One of the advances.
let's
Look at
choose one of
this.
these
Look at this art. It's just a body in a barrel. My
but
goodness.
but this is what's so great about it, right? Like
Right.
it's art. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Like it's it's very stylized, and so you know it's art. So but it's like this is what it is. Um
Yeah. You know exactly what it feels like. Even if you don't play a carry-on priest, you know what it feels
exactly,
like to be around one. Just from this,
exactly.
that's how powerful the art is. It's how powerful.
Beautiful. Um let's go with the high advance.
Okay.
They One of the high advances is blood hunt.
Okay.
Once you've tasted blood, you're all but impossible to stop. To activate this power, taste the target's blood and you mark stress to your blood.
Mm.
Until you sleep or until they die, you may step out from the shadows nearby to them whenever you desire.
Oh
They can protect
man.
themselves, give or take, by eliminating all nearby shadows. That is nightmare fuel. That is
Yes,
literal nightmare
and the
fuel.
player is the nightmare in this case.
Yes. Something that I didn't mention in terms of there's two types of magic
Mm.
with Inspire, occult magic and divine magic.
Mm.
All magic is going to cause you stress. All magic is going to cause you stress. Occult magic will cause you stress just from casting it.
Mm.
So, no matter even if you're doing a good spell for you, unique, it's still stress on your body.
Mm.
Usually, it's mind stress. Um, for divine, if you fail, you're going to get some stress.
Mm.
You know. Um, so this is another thing I love about this system, which is there is always a price to be paid for using magic. You know, so it's high stakes. And I like that for the magic system. It's a kind of just like really, really understanding the place of magic within the world view. You
Mm.
know, it really nails it in there. And I
Mm.
really love that about it. You know,
For sure. I mean, I think one thing that happens in D and D, you have things like cantrips, and it just,
hmm
it just makes you feel like, and some of them are really powerful. The ability, I mean, just think about it, like the ability to like shoot a firebolt out of your finger whenever you want.
exactly.
That's so
And
strong, and but you could just do it whenever you want. It's just like, I mean, D and D is
Mage
basically
Hand is
fantasy
ridiculous.
superheroes,
Yeah,
and
Mage Hand is
this,
ridiculous.
yeah,
I'm like, no. And that wasn't the original inception of the cantrips. They were never that,
mm,
you know. Since the introduction of cantrips to D&D, they have become increasingly more powerful, and they never originally were something that you could always continually cast.
right.
They were pretty much just like, I always refer back to, what's the freaking Mickey Mouse movie? Fantasia.
Oh, right.
Um,
The
that's
Sorcerer's
that's
Apprentice.
cantrips.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's little cantrips. It's like, oh, you're learning, about magic, and so you might can do something here and there. It helps you a little bit, but now they're basically in effect, point 0.5 level spells.
Mm,
You know, but yeah, it's
yeah.
I like the fact that you're always paying. You know,
Right. Yeah,
the
yeah. It's
firebrand.
yeah, the firebrand, the propaganda master. He's got the
Yo,
flag. Like his
yes,
the art is just
I I, I
incredible.
want I want someone to play. I want someone to play every class. Let me just not even lie to myself.
Yeah.
But I would be real interested in terms of how a person plays this class.
Mm,
Um, because, like you said, the propaganda is the closest that I could think in a D&D concept would be a type of bard,
right.
you know, um, possibly some of the homebrew classes of fighter that's more like a support fighter rallying the troops, but more so the bard. Um,
Mm,
so they are the revolutionary. They're like the front
mm,
facing, right? Revolutionary. They don't hide from it. I mean, they might wear the disguise up, but like this is their main thing. This is what they do. Um, so their core abilities are lead from the front.
mm,
You excel when you're under pressure. So when you get stress in shadows, when you have six or more stress in shadow, you gain mastery on all actions. So basically,
mm,
you know, shadow is um, basically how well you are merging into society, right? You're not making too much noise and rumbling and stuff like that. But the more stress that you get in shadow, basically, the more eyes are on you, the more eyes of the
mm,
law is on you, and everything. But when that happens to them, in all their other abilities, they gain like extra dice for their dice pool.
mm,
So they're like under pressure. They get busy. You
mm,
know,
mm.
draw a crowd. You can pull
Oh yeah.
together a crowd at a moment's notice. Once per session, you can draw a crowd to you in a matter of minutes. People
Right.
will stop what they're doing so long as it isn't life or death and listen to what you have to say. So many uses for that.
Right.
So many uses, especially when you have to get out of a place, get out of dodge, or
Right.
you know, slip, the other way or things like that. Um, Even open up paths for you, right? Like if you can get people to listen to you and move in a certain direction, you might open up another path for the rest of your compatriots. So
Yeah.
many different like great applications for it. And honestly, outside of a game that's set like in a modern times and stuff, this is really the first time I've seen like a propaganda like, you
Mm.
know, class.
Right.
I haven't really seen that done before.
Yeah, I can't
So
think
this
of
is
any corollary to any other system really.
yeah,
Yeah. That
because
is
it
cool.
yeah, so I really, really like that. It really like nails down um that that essence of them.
Mm.
Um so I'm gonna pick a medium advance, which is
Oh,
scapegoat.
give me
Your
scapegoat.
ability to
Oh,
shift blame is legendary.
right.
Plus one in shadow. Once per session, when an NPC accuses you of wrongdoing, you can automatically convince them that you're entirely innocent and someone else, choose who, is responsible.
Right.
Hacking the freaking narrative. Like I said, like these are
That's
tools
that's right.
that hack the narrative because me, as the game master, it's like, oh, you're caught. Like this
Mm.
is we just gonna decide what we're gonna do from this point.
Mm.
You totally just go off the rails with it. And now you're not blamed anymore. And on top of it, you probably blame someone else that's going to be another issue and problem now.
Right.
This person might come back and get revenge on you. This person might, um, like I said, the system of Spire, I definitely refer to as terms of narrative hacking tools. And what this does also as a game master, it gives you incredible tools. And so
Mm.
I would say that it is a lot easier to game master a game of Spire for a new player as a person who has never dungeon master or game master before than it is to do D&D any day.
Mm.
And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough with TTRPGs. We talk about the ease of the system for the players, but we don't really, and we talk about things that the overall game does good for everybody, but we really don't talk a lot about games that give the dungeon master, the storyteller, the game master, the tools they need to tell the story that needs to be told.
Mm.
Inspire does a good job at that.
Yeah, if this was D&D and you were doing something like scapegoat, you would just roll a deception check and that's it. And it's very
Yep.
empty. And this is like there's so much more material for you to work with. Um yeah, I mean it's interesting like we were talking about ambiguity in the lore, but there's no ambiguity in the system.
Ooh,
Like
yes, yes, yes. I like that. That's spot on. Spot on.
yeah.
They, like you said in the beginning, they knew what kind of game that they wanted to create, and they went totally in that direction with that,
Mm.
and they didn't veer from that, and so and I would actually hazard to say that when they created Heart, which is a very, very parallel system, there are aspects of Heart that I use in Spire, um, that they developed and realized like, oh, and they came out with like another book that adopted some of these mechanics to Spire. And one of them was these things called beats. So
Mm.
beats are basically, depending on your class the character is playing, it gives certain goalposts that you can reach, um, that would trigger an advancement. So it's
Mm.
kind of like a map for each character class. Um, what kind of things would trigger a high advance? What kind of things would trigger a low advance?
Mm.
And you can personalize them. So, like for instance, and let's say an Azurite character may want to purchase a particular item. Once they do that, they have reached that particular goal. And that's the beat for them. So, I think they, like I said, they've really really thought about the mechanics of the system, and even when adding additions to it, they know exactly what they're going for.
Mm.
Exactly.
Mm. Mm. Next up,
Oh,
we have the idol.
oh.
The
So we
idol.
had another one of my players played the idol. Um, and the idol is basically also another bard like character, but this is a bard like on steroids, like it's the Kardashians. Okay.
Right.
It is
Right.
your most stuck up celebrity. This
Right.
is the idol. And something that's worth mentioning is that Spire, the elves, the Alfir wear
Mm.
mask for everything. They don't show their bare faces.
Mm.
So the whole um, society is built upon around this, even amongst the drow. So when you get to the lower levels, they might not always mask up and everything, but all these middle levels and stuff, they're always masking.
Mm.
Um, the idols basically are a living art piece. They see themselves as a living art piece. Everything that they do is art. And they have their followers, their fans, all this kind of stuff. And they move around that. And you would think, once again, that a person like this, wouldn't be interested in rebellion and stuff. But every single point in history, you can tell whatever war or rebellion it was, if there was an entertainment industry, there was someone who was in it who was like, this is not all right.
Mm.
Even if that person was making millions of dollars, they still would be
Mm.
like, yeah, this is not right.
Mm.
Um, so some of their core abilities are the life and soul of the party. People flock to be near you. Once per session, so long as there are people nearby and a place to have it, you can create an instant gathering with dancing, games, drinking, eating, and chatting. The party gives you mastery to persuade, deceive, or distract actions performed within it.
Mm.
What a great way to set up an environment for you to do all types of dastardly things and to get certain things done, right? You know, um, glamour.
Yeah, this one's cool too.
Black magic and poise lets you become whoever they want you to be. Once per situation, choose an NPC using a cocktail of charm, practical poise, and semi legal black magic. You can change your appearance to represent their ideal partner.
Mm.
You don't get to determine what this looks like. It's entirely reliant on the person you're targeting. And you can end the spell by scrubbing off whatever makeup you've applied and spending 5 minutes in front of a mirror, remembering what you look like.
Mm.
Whatever your target prefers, you'll always look like you. If
Oof.
you're obsessed with tall people, you'll look taller. If they like Alfir, you'll look as though there's some Alfir blood in you. If
Mm,
they're mad about one particular person, you'll resemble them, but not enough to say passes them.
mm.
I love this.
Powerful. So powerful.
Yes.
So
I,
powerful.
I think another thing, like I said, is that they commit to the bit, right?
Yeah.
Like magic in Spire is dark. Even the divine magic is dark, and little things like little additions as a writer, I just love it. Like saying that you end the spell by scrubbing off whatever makeup you've applied and spending 5 minutes in front of a mirror remembering what you look like. That's just haunting.
Mm,
You know, but once again, I love it because it really lays down the price of magic,
mm.
right? You're going to pay a price. Um, because what if you don't remember what you look like?
Right, right. I was gonna say, yeah. It's like,
Like, and there's mechanics for stuff like that to happen, right? If you get certain types of stress and stuff, I guarantee you that one of the idols fallout is, can be some of that stuff, you know. Um,
mm.
which advance did she have before? Trying to think which advance that my
The
oh
there
this
was
was
there was the high one. There was the Soul's Portrait.
oh that's a beautiful one.
That's the one that sold me. I was like, okay, maybe actually an idol is what I would play if I played Spire. The
Oh,
Soul's
okay, yeah.
Portrait is crazy.
You portion off the ugly parts of yourself into a cursed work of art. Your craft, an image of yourself, or something more abstract that relates to yourself, that acts as a conduit for all of your sins and physical ailments. Oh, kind of like a sin eater. Um,
Right,
while the artwork is intact, your face cannot be marred in any way. You will not age. You will stay beautiful, and any injuries you suffer will not be visible to all, but most through examination. Now, the portrait of Dorian Gray.
right,
Um,
right. That's where they got it from. And they
In addition to this, while the artwork exists, you gain 3 additional resistance slots in both blood and mind. Um,
powerful.
man, that's just incredible. Th- And I love how, like I said, they get these classes right, right? Like I've read like a lot of theirs like creation logs in terms of around Spire, and they literally said like they were in there to really take all these like D&D classes to like an extreme, and
Mm,
they succeeded.
completely.
Um, there is this medium advance called Kill for Me. Um, you can push people far past their limits, right?
Mm,
And the NPC you share the bond with will perform any task for you, no matter how immoral
yeah,
or
really.
depraved. All you have to do is ask. And
Wow.
there's it reminds me of the movie Candyman. And
Yeah.
at one point of the point Candyman, he's asking them like, "Will you be my victim?" Like that kind of like seduction. Like oh, it's great stuff. Just great stuff.
Yeah.
I need to find another. Let me see if I have another light. My ring light. Should have
Okay.
there. I know I have another one. Yes, I do. You come on now. Woo. All right. Yeah. So our idol went out in like a blaze of glory at the end. Like yeah. Oh no, I take that back. She wasn't an idol. She was the mask. Okay,
Oh,
that's gonna
I think
be
that's
another.
who's next. I
Yeah,
just
no, night.
wanted to linger on this cover. I think this is my favorite character cover art out of the whole group. Look at the face on the side down here and how this artwork the artwork is just this is my favorite I think right here out of
I
all of
think
them.
yeah, it's just
That is
incredible.
amazing. Oh,
Like I said,
the
the
knight.
artwork is what sold me.
Mm,
The
the
night is
knight.
incredible because you're like night, like how okay, it's a fighter, right? That's
Yeah.
why I saw the other classes. I'm just like the night, okay. And then I read it, I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know. So basically,
Look at
you are a traditional knight of an ancient order. but who has now long fallen by the wayside. Like all the knights are basically just glorified motorcycle clubs.
Right, they're just ruffians. Like they
Yes, that's all they are.
pretend like they're honorable, but they're not.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And I love that because
Yeah.
it gives this it gives this whole notion of like past glory, right?
Right.
But at the same time, many of them are just lushes, right?
Right.
Like your character probably is one of the few who actually like even thinks, deep about things and stuff. They're literally just about turf territories, pub crawls, that's
Right.
what they're about, you know. But I love the way that they also fold the traditional knight stuff into the class,
Mm.
and the setting, you know. So their core abilities, um, pub crawler, you
Pub
know.
crawler. Yeah, that's the first ability is pub
Yeah.
crawling.
So you have an encyclopedia knowledge of where to get drunk. Once per
Right.
game, you can name a nearby bar, pub, or whatever, um, where you know the landlord. Whether or not they like you is up to the GM. you know. But I like once again, it starts right off the rip by saying like, listen, this ooh, sorry, this
Oh,
is
you're
these guys are just they're luscious. This is what they do. You know, your second ability is the law of the docks. You carry a mighty weapon. So, as a knight, you are allowed to carry a large bladed weapon, which is something that we should mention also,
mm,
which is why this is not D&D, which is everybody's not walking around with a billion weapons. It's
mm.
a city, so that in and of itself is different from a D&D campaign. you know, because with the D&D campaigns, you can walk into a city with, a whole bunch of different weapons, and nothing come from it. But I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out this
Okay.
different light stuff for me. Let's try that one. Okay, we'll do it that one. So some of their advances, though, I think what the I want to talk about their high advances
Okay.
because their high advances are all centered around um I want to say parodies. Parodies is not exactly the right word, but they are basically analogies of classical, you know, night quest.
Right.
And they're like spot on. So pull the sword from the stone,
There it is. There it is.
you know, you travel in search of a legendary sword. When you accept the quest, you gain the resist skill and occult domain as you are ritually branded or tattooed with symbols of chivalric protection. You must journey to the center of Spire, find Saint Benefer's sword, and pull it from the floorboards of the stone, a pub. into which he plunged in, hundreds of years ago. When you complete
Yeah.
the quest, you gain a D6 brutal magical weapon. It's magical. You can use it to attack ethereal creatures or those who are immune to, normal weapons. In addition, choose one of the following upgrades. So it's all these different things that the sword can become. But I like how it's like, yes, we are doing, this quest for the sword. Yes, it is the bottom of some pub, so it's all still, within there. In terms of the next campaign that I'm running, there is a particular one of the people wants to play at night, and I'm here
Oh yeah,
for it.
that's gonna be fun. That's
I
gonna be
also
fun.
I don't know if you've noticed this also, if you've been to the website anytime recently, there's two small one-page games
Mm.
that they printed. And one of them is like Squire pub crawl. So it's like it's you play out win a night with the squire, so little in game, one pages, which works well with this game also. Like they develop so much lore and so many
Yeah, here it is.
different avenues for creation
Yeah.
that you can create all these in-game games. And so I love it. Like I was telling you about the card deck. that's a game, and you also, can predict, the future.
Mm.
I love how they get all this stuff right. You know.
Oh, here we
Oh
go.
man.
Lejean.
Oh, the Legion. And I just did for my homegirl. So the Legion um is probably the most straightforward cleric class that
Yeah,
we
it's just
have.
straight up a cleric. Like,
It's a cleric. It's a
yeah,
cleric. It's a moon cleric. It's a moon
yeah.
cleric. Um, and so, as is stated in the lore, this is the this is the socially acceptable aspect of the moon goddess that they can worship.
Mm,
As you mentioned before, the ministry itself, subtly and in some places overtly, they worship one of the other aspects of the moon goddess, which is the dark side of the moon.
mm,
Um, and then there's a third portion, which is, I think, I want to say it's in Sinner Strata, which is the blood moon.
mm.
And that one is a next level one. But the Legion are most traditionally clerics, but once again, it's just weird. It's Spire, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
right.
you know, they have their core abilities, the rite of respite. You create a place of stillness and healing. Once per session, you lead your allies in a recuperation session where you hold vigil. Describe how you create a comfortable healing environment and how you help them.
Mm,
All allies present may restore 3 stress from mind or blood. Now, once again, I want to point out when they use this ability, if they fail, they will have stress. So it's not 100% you're going to be healed,
mm.
you know. And in taking the risk to heal you, they may harm themselves. And I like that because once again, it
Yeah,
puts how in some campaigns, well, back in the day at least, the cleric was just the first aid kit,
right.
right? It's like, oh, I need you to heal this, I need you to heal that.
Yep,
Um, this means that you really need to put forethought in who you heal, when you heal, and how you heal,
right.
because it will affect your character. You know, um, Moonlight. Lemier's light shines forth from you. Your forehead gem or necklace or bracelet, etc., glows as brightly as the full moon, casting a calm light into the darkness that cannot be extinguished unless you decide to snuff it or fall unconscious. The more
Mm,
ritualist casting the spell simultaneously, the brighter the light becomes.
mm,
So this is a good character class also just for people, who might want to stay within certain parameters
mm.
in terms of
Like,
familiarity. But
yeah.
once again, it's still going to be spun because the context of Spire.
Mm,
You are literally running distinct sanction religion.
mm,
You are definitely being watched. That in fact, your fellow priests are all watching you. So like
mm.
the stakes are high. The stakes are high.
Yeah.
And let's speak. It's speaking of high stakes. Let's talk about one of my favorite things. Their high advances. The
The
body of
high
silver
advance. Okay.
light.
Oh yeah.
You can change your body into pure
Uh,
moonlight.
that's right.
You get +1 on mind.
That's so cool.
Um, and then you mark D6 stress to mind. As the
Mm,
culmination of an hour-long ritual, you dissolve into a roving patch of bright moonlight. In this form, you cannot affect the world aside from illuminating it, and you cannot affect you, but you can move great distances at astonishing speed and bypass any barrier that lets light through. This
mm,
form lasts until sunrise or until you wish to dismiss it.
mm.
Man, imagine setting up a scene where it's like right before sunrise, and you're on a time clock or things like that. Um, this is also a great class from to play in terms of understanding that when you play Spire, you are going to be on some Byzantine type of stuff. There's going to be plans within plans within plans within plans. Um, this class puts you kind of like if you're not right in the hornet's nest, you're like right next to
Mm.
the oppressors. So like it's a real interesting class too because yes, it is a station religion, but how much of the drow public really appreciates what you're doing? They might see
Mm.
just kowtowing up to the powers that be, stuff
Yeah,
like that. So it's and like I said, the even though it is the most cleric of the cleric classes here in Spire, it still has its whole spin on everything, you know.
everything. Yeah, they've
Yeah, the way
all got something interesting to work with. Like one of the things I run into with new players in D&D is it's really hard to get them to understand how to have a character because there's not really a lot of guidance. But this is completely different. You know exactly what the tensions are in your life and in all the different dimensions of your life.
right. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think
so good.
that's something that we
Yeah.
should do when if you are creating a homebrew world, these are some of the tools you need to give to your characters in a homebrew world, right?
Mm,
I understand that I'm a person who says no at the table, so like in my homebrew world, there are certain lineages that you're just not going to be able to play.
mm,
You know, there might be certain classes that I'm just like, yeah, no, like I'm not playing, I'm not bringing scions into my particular homebrew world. You
right.
know what I'm saying? And to just go along, to just be going along is ridiculous to me because it's a collaborative process, in terms of the story we're telling. And part of my responsibility of the collaborative process is creating the environment, the world. I am giving you a whole bunch of tools by which you can create your character within the context of this world. And if you're playing with me, that's kind of like the contract,
Mm,
right? Like I'm not going to stymie you. I'm definitely going to give you a large breadth of being able to create your character, but you're not creating a character that you can pop into any campaign. You're creating a character for this particular homebrew world, and so
mm,
that's what Spire really, really gets really, really right. These are characters that are in essence this world. And just by the existence of the classes as they are, it tells you a lot about the structure of the society,
mm,
and I find that missing a lot in a lot of homebrewed worlds, even in D&D, right? You have a traditional cleric, you have a traditional fire bard, da 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 da. But how do bards in your world, structure your world? They have to be a particular type of bard, right?
mm,
Like the wizards, like how do they how do they belong to your world? How do they shape the world? Um, and this gets that right, you know.
mm. Next
Man,
up, we have the
the mask,
masked.
man.
The
Yeah,
masked.
this was the character, that she went crazy with it. So as we mentioned before,
I can
you
see
know,
that.
the mask, everybody wears masks, right?
Right.
And so the masks are basically the drow who have wholeheartedly adopted the mask for their own and utilize it to move through all levels of society. As I said before, the Alfir wear masks, and basically drow on the upper levels and stuff always wear masks. The mask have absorbed themselves into like the whole philosophy magic of wearing a mask. And that is, I guess they would be like, probably like, what's the rogue subclass? Eh, Not really trickster-esque, but like they would be more like a mastermind infiltrator
Mm,
with a healthy dose of magic,
mm.
you know, um, in terms of like in D&D. But
Yeah, they
their
my
core
take on
ability,
them was that they were sort of these like hide in plain sight in high society. Like you're in high society, but you're just the person changing the silverware at the table of a giant
yeah,
feast, and so no one is even thinking about you. You are basically there doing labor, but you're invisible, and that allows you some things that you can do secretly.
no, it's
You're
definitely
perfect as you could be an assassin, you could be there's so many things that you could do at the behest of these lords, these
right.
elfir lords during your durance. But that's a skill to blend in at that level, super useful if you're part of the resistance.
Yeah, she got them into we had to get to a certain part that was different upper part of society, and she became the means by which they were able to enter into that area due to her connections, her bonds, and everything. Um, so this its core abilities are just incredible. I'm just read this.
Okay.
Smell status. You know precisely who to talk to or who to take out to get things done. Once
Mm,
per session, ask the GM who's really in charge here. You can find out easily or you already know thanks to your connections.
yeah.
Narrative hacking right there.
Right.
Um, she did that when like security guards and stuff covered up, and she found out. And then the person who was in charge, it then turned out to be a person who she was bonded with. So it was
Ooh.
just it was incredible.
That's
Um,
tricky
Servant to the
being.
High One. You spent years bowing and scraping at the feet of the High Elves when interacting with the Alfir. Roll with mastery on social checks. This is what enabled her to bring
Mm,
them into this particular level of Spire, um,
mm,
and get busy. Um, but she had a low advance. Did she have a low advance? Oh, there's also one of the additional books for Spire is a book of Mask. Um,
mm.
Beautiful mask in it. Beautiful mask, and each of the masks has it's like a little story behind it, where it's used, how it's used, and stuff like that. Um, oh, so this mask is an incredible one. So basically, a lot of and the medium advances are basically there's different masks that they can wear, right?
Right.
And
Yeah,
one of these
yeah.
masks,
All their yeah.
wait, is it?
Mask of Plenty.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and this all
Mouthless.
I was trying to figure out if this a cult or divine magic, but they're occult magic.
Right. Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
Let's see.
the mouthless mass, the most precise application of grace to some is silence. You gain the sneak skill while wearing the mask, which is worn by clenching it between your teeth. It has no straps. That little detail, that little
Right.
detail. You know, you can elect to
Oh, so
make
brilliant.
no noise when you perform any action, and objects or people nearby will be silent too. And of course, you cannot speak while wearing the mask for obvious reasons. But the details, they get the details right, you know.
Mm,
Um, and ooh, that would play so well in a live play.
mm.
Like
For sure.
a live play of Spire would be incredible because first of all, there's mask,
Right.
right?
Just
Right, right.
have the
There's
mask.
back. There's mask and yeah, it would play so well. But the mask is an incredible um you might say it's a necessary character class that you need if you're talking about, Byzantine stealth kind of stuff,
Mm,
you know. And I love that like I said, the whole structure of the system supports that instead of just making it, oh, you have to create some special thing for this character to be effective, you know.
mm.
That's how I felt like about D&D back in the day when they first came out with like the assassin. It was just like, yeah, so they have to have an assassination in order to be effective.
Right.
Like that's their only functionality.
The one thing
You
they do.
know, oh man, this this class right here is another one of my
Midwife.
favorites. The art, first of all, you know, just
This
looking
is
at
pretty great.
the midwife. So what's great about the midwife is, first of all, um, if you're a midwife, the drow reproduce, by laying eggs,
Right.
and the midwives are the ones who have to watch these eggs until they hatch. Um, And if you're a midwife, you have already been marked in some way by their spider goddess. So there's some type of physical thing on you that points that you're going to be a midwife. Um, and what's incredible to me is as much as this is in homage to or directly a lineage from the drow creation within D&D and Loth and things of those nature, it still comes off as totally unique.
Mm,
Like I it takes me some moments when I'm looking at it to realize like, oh wait a minute, D&D also has, spiders and drow connection because this is just so much more salient, I feel, like they really, really get it down to the nitty-gritty in terms of just like, I don't know, they just get it right.
They're
you know?
yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, part of their brilliance here is that they don't do the makers, the designers, do not do too much with in terms of the lore. They don't make you drink from the fire hose. They just pick one or two super unique, interesting details. So in the
Mhm.
case of the midwife, it's simply the drow reproduce by laying eggs. So if you lay an egg, there's one or two or three of you. The other, but just if you stop and just think about that one detail, there's all this lore that you can just suddenly unpack in your own mind with your own imagination. Well, if you've got
Yes,
these midwives taking care of all the eggs, then the drow by their very nature are actually very communal people,
yes,
right? Because
yes,
who's really responsible for raising the children, right? Who's
yeah,
like it's so it just that they can, I think they're just super tactical with their lore, and like they're just really just they pick one detail that's the most impactful, that will let the player and the game master just sort of run with it in their own head. And so just the two of these things, they're marked, they've got some spider aspect to them, and they are the people responsible for the reproduction of their entire species. And just those three things, and it's like boom, suddenly the whole thing fills out in your head.
right.
I think that's
Because
what
then
they're
it
brilliant.
becomes,
And every single one of the classes is like that. There's just one or three things, and just
and then just
it's
build it
so
off
good.
of it. And
Yep.
it's like that book that has the beats in it, it also has additional low, medium, high advances for each of the character classes.
Mm,
Um, so once again, just even more, but it makes it so easy to create those advances because you're not really pigeonholed heavily in one area, like you mentioned. And it also once again sets up this beautiful way in terms of just like the levels of, like I said, of just intrigue and stuff. So like you have the Legion who are, you know, utilizing the state sanctions religion and visibly like seen as leaders in the society. But hey, the midwives, they knew you when you were in the egg.
mm,
you know, you got egg mates, you have
right.
clutch mates, you have they have a certain type of influence within drow society, and
Mm,
I love that. I
yeah.
love it. You
Yeah.
know, um, their core abilities, we got martyr, of course. You sacrifice your life inch by inch to safeguard the future of the drow. Once per session, when an ally takes fallout, you appear nearby so long as it would be even slightly feasible for you to do so. They ignore the effects of the fallout, and you take D6 stress to the appropriate resistance instead.
Mm.
Man, if that's not just the most motherly matrion
S-
thing that you can think about, like empowered, like that's incredible,
mm,
And it's such a great story tool. Like
yeah.
you're suffering, you're down, and then the midwife comes and just like places her hand on your
Oh,
shoulder, just like yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
This is good. What was the
Protector's
next?
Eye.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. Protector's eye.
Yeah, ancient instincts bound into you by forgotten sorcery give you a measure of what a person really cares about. Once per situation, ask the GM what a particular NPC wishes to protect amongst all else.
Oh,
And once again, like I said, like it's basically telepathy,
right.
but the way that it's very, very specifically framed and tied to the midwife is just incredible. And once again, it becomes a hacking tool, right? Because let's say you have a player who, sometimes in D&D the world is too open, I should say, or the
Mm.
abilities are too open, right? Think about the first time that Wish ever appeared in any of your campaigns, right?
Yeah, it always
You're like,
derailed
oh
everything.
man,
Always
like what am I
did.
what am I going to wish for? These give you, like, you could have telepathy, but you could really kind of not know what. you would be searching for, right? This gives that nuance, that flavor, that tone to push the story forward, um, while at the same time mimicking some well-known, abilities, but the way they frame them just make it so story worthy, you
Mm.
know?
It's interesting. Like we go back to the Azerite. Like they have a kind of a telepathy too, which is what do you desire most? And
Right.
that's has subtle different, very subtle and profound differences between the midwife, which is what do you want to protect?
Yes.
That's a
Yeah.
different thing, and you can use both of those as levers on
Yeah.
someone.
And I like it that it stays in tune with the character class. Um, and for degree, it's good for a player to help them have like these guidelines to keep them kind of keep within the framework in the world. Like
Mm,
I definitely am an advocate of innovation, creativity, and all these kind of things. But I've also, as a writer, I know that when you place limits on certain things, it causes you to be able to use the space in a different way. If you
mm,
told me that I have an infinite amount of words to write a poem versus I need to write a poem in this many words, you know, the short poem is going to be better.
mm,
It just is.
mm,
The framework caused me to be able to be creative in that space. Same way sometimes with dancing, with other activities. Sometimes just having an open end, you know, is too many things and people get lost in that. But when you really, really have to hunker down, then you can really, really get like that nuance. And I think this is
mm,
what they do really well here.
mm.
No. What I know that they have. Oh, um, Oh, wow. I didn't know that one. So they have one called No Magic But the Magic of My Mistress. This is a high advance.
High advance.
The,
Okay.
the spells of inferior casters and gods are caught are caught in your web like flies. So basically, you roll fight an occult to cast, and on its success, any effect that originates from a magical source, be that occult or divine, is suppressed while you are nearby until the end of the current situation. Minor
Mm.
magical effects are completely undone, and you become immune to magical attacks. This is crazy.
Super
This is
powerful.
crazy. You're basically saying, listen, ain't nobody power than than my
That's
mistress who handles the birth of all of these drow into the world.
right.
And this is also to note that the midwives also worship a different drow goddess, which is the drow
Oh,
goddess of spiders, which allows them to perform these particular rites and rituals for the people. So that's also really, really interesting because you now have all these different groups worshiping different gods
mm,
and deities. Like, how does that even come into play? You know?
mm.
Love it. Oh,
I think this is the last one on the list, isn't it?
this is the last one that's in this book.
Okay.
There is one more who isn't in this book officially,
Mm.
which is the Mortician Executioner.
That's
But
sounds
the
pretty
last
cool.
one, this one though, we had one of my players played this for Missy and Sage, and this it doesn't have an analog. It's crazy. So
Mm,
basically, Spire tried to create at one point a subway system that basically a subway train system that would travel all throughout Spire from the top to the bottom. Due to various different reasons, it never got completed.
right.
Right. Um, but there's magical resonance throughout these whole parts of the system. And this is where the Vermisian sages come in. They go into these tunnels and they enter into alternate realities sometimes. They use them for the stored data, all this kind of crazy, just bonkers stuff. Um, so the Vermisian, that's the name of the subway system.
The subway system.
Um,
Yeah.
it was it failed. But these guys came through and just like, yeah, we're going to use it for our own, thing. So they basically are drow historians. They use the non-Euclidean space to store information and relics of their home nations.
Right.
Um, they're it's batshit crazy. So core abilities, back door. You throw open a door and lunge through it into a twisted metallic nightmare home. Once per session, you can find an entrance to the vault. The vault is the center information gathering of storage place within the Vermisian. Um, Once per session, you can find an entrance to the vault, no matter where you are in the spire. Whether it was there before you started looking remains unclear. Inside, you'll find a collection of strange items and peculiar books, many of which relate or come from alternate histories, and some which tell the truth.
Mm.
Any non-stage character who enters the vault rolls resist plus occult or suffer mind stress.
Ooh.
Let me just say that there was one point that the Vermisian sage, in order to escape something, he brought the whole party within the vault, and they
Ooh.
all suffered mind
Oh.
stress. It was bananas. They had to get out of there. And so another one's called ability is the vault. You have access to the vast interdimensional informational resources of the sages. While inside the vault, um, whether you access it through a back door or by normal means, you have access to equipment that will allow you to perform an investigate check on any subject. It won't confer mastery, but it will allow you to perform the check.
Mm.
So basically, you can do Google real quick there, you know. Um,
Yeah. You know what? It's rather than a D&D corollary, it's almost like Cyberpunk and the Vermisian Sage or the hackers.
yes, yes,
That's what it
yes,
felt like to me.
very, very much so. Very, very much so. Um, this is another great thing. Obsessive researcher. This is still part of the core abilities. You spend every quiet moment filling your brain with knowledge which is often fleeting. At the start of each session, you gain a knack of your choosing any skill or domain, even if you don't normally have access to that skill or domain.
Mm.
At the end of the session, you lose that knack. You can't have the same knack two sessions in a row. You get bored and you must expand your mind in different ways.
Yeah.
So basically, what a knack is that in a particular area, you can get a specialty.
Mm.
So, you might, I don't know, if it's like a particular books, you might, if they're like occult books, you might have a mastery in books about demons,
Mm.
something like that. Um, so yeah, you can have knacks in all different types of things. The Hermesian Sage is hilarious because at one part of our campaign, they got access to a gun which would shutter things through time. Um, they decided to shoot themselves, and when they jumped back in the scene, I told them there was all a slightly different reality, so certain things that had happened didn't happen. Like it was getting batshit crazy because I was like, you need this because they were being attacked by a whole bunch of hyenas from carrion priests, and instead
Ooh.
of shooting the hyenas, he shot himself, man. But he was a funny guy, yo. He was a funny
That's
guy.
smart though, actually. It's very creative.
No,
Yeah.
so like one of their high advances is rewrite. Um, who controls the vault controls the past. Roll compel an occult to cast a spell. So you gather your allies in the vault. You use the strange energies there to change the events of the past. You and each ally present can remove one ongoing fallout they currently suffering from, as well as refresh um,
Mm.
from stress from any of their resistances.
Mm.
Uh, It is through your skill as a sage and careful doctoring of newspaper reports and witness statements that you subtly tweak the past. The time stream can't handle big changes and tends to reject them out of hand. As such, this power can't be used to mold the past into a more pleasing shape, except when it comes to who's suffering what stress.
Mm.
So there's a lot of things in here about with the Vermisian Sage about jumping timelines. And in this particular book that I can't remember the name of it, I have it somewhere here, um, where it talked about adopting beats for Spire, and when they also gave additional low and high, medium high advances, they also did this thing for them where they gave like an arch enemy mold
Mm.
for each class, and the arch enemy archetype for the Vermisian Sage was themselves from another timeline. you know, so like um the oh god, what was the one for the idol? The one for the idol I think was the funniest. It was Critic Mystic. So where like the critics were empowered to like, basically legally, if they did it like a play, to like assassinate idols, like
Ooh.
just crazy stuff. This gets back to the mortician executioner class, um, which actually I know I have it here. I think they're in sin. I'm almost positive they're in sin. Um, oh wait, I take it back. There are three classes, official classes,
Mm.
that aren't here.
That aren't in the book.
There's the gutter cleric, there's the gutter cleric, the mortician executioner, and the inksmith.
Inksmith. Yeah, I think I ran across that. I can't remember where.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those three also. I mean, we can go over those at another time because I would have to pull them off of the
Yeah.
different sources. But those are three official ones that aren't in
Inksmith.
this. The No, there's a fourth one, the secret spy one, the spy. I don't remember the name of it, but basically you become such a deep agent that you lose your own personality.
Mm.
And you basically are just reflections, like you lose who you are. There are three classes um that aren't part of the official world that I've been considering adding in my next campaign. One is basically, as I said before, there's the Alfir, there's the Drow, there's humans, and there's gnolls, but there's also the goblinesque kobold-like creatures of Spire, which are the Goblikin,
Mm.
and they're basically not one race per se, but basically just the mutated, you know, people and things that just all kind of mush together into one. And it's one class that's basically a play off of three whatever in a trench coat. So you play three
The
Goblikin in a
three
trench
goblin.
coat. Oh my god, it's incredible. Like they have stats, they have incredible things for
That's
all of
a
them too. Basically, one
good
of them
one.
found the mask, and they realized that they could, you know, impersonate an elf, and that's what they kept doing. They have like attacks like stab you in the knee and stuff like that. That was a funny class. Um, I think the only other one that I will consider is there's a type of courier class, so like a postmaster kind of class. Um, that you get your own goat, and you can go all over Spire and stuff. But once again, that's the other thing about Spire, like, and we talked about this a little bit, which is the setting itself doesn't lend to there's still so many things you have to fill in, right?
Mm.
Like nowhere inspired does it specifically tell you how high the ceiling is between levels, right? We know that it's enough to have like a micro environment and stuff. They also don't tell you specifically how you travel from level to level,
Mm.
right? Like they do have that portion where we have the couriers who fly on the giant ravens, right? We have that portion. But like literally like just the normal commerce that goes between the different levels, they don't really go into that.
Mm.
For me, I had two different ones that I used in my adventure. I used that in one portion there was like a crazy long elevator along the side of the wall that just slowly creeps up. It
Just goes
literally
r
takes like a half of a day to get, to the next
yeah.
part. And other ones, I literally had this huge stair just all the way up. And so, like at different portions, like people literally are like live on certain levels of these stairs, run their businesses on certain levels of these stairs because you have to go all the way up.
'Cause
But
it's
like
just
things
massive.
like that is what I
Yeah.
love about Spire because it's
Yeah,
not
I
you have to create.
yeah, I mean, like, I think one of the someone's resistance to playing, outside of D&D and you present this idea, it's like, okay, everyone's in a giant city. As soon as you say that, there's going to be a lot of people who say, "Oh, that sounds too constraining." Like
Yes,
I don't want to have a game where everyone's just locked into a city the whole time.
right.
But it's exactly what you're saying, which is like there are so many opportunities to do something different, original, and creative. Just stop and think about it for just a second. And that ambiguity, the open, the gray areas of everything allow you to do that. That's cool. Like you could have, yeah, there's so many things. Like you could have an entire, you know, apartment building be the elevator, right? Like
Yes,
there's so many, and just have a magic portal that you have to
yeah,
sacrifice something to go to another floor. There's so many
yeah,
things. There's so many opportunities if you just stop and think about it. So I don't know. I hope overall that anyone who made it through these last 2 hours with us, the primary takeaway is that there is so much, there's so much out there,
yeah,
and this is a prime example of a diamond in the rough game that if you invest in it will reward you
yes,
as a TTRPG player. It will deeply reward you and you'll have an experience that you cannot have otherwise. And it'll
yeah.
help you. Yeah, there's just so many good things about it.
And in a lot of these systems, what I like to explain to people is that when you experience these other systems and you realize sometimes, even if you're a hardcore, I only play D&D person, right? You can learn from these systems.
Right.
You really can learn different ways to tell a story, different ways to present a story. It gets back to what we were saying, I think, before we started recording and everything, how, I was speaking about the post the article that I wrote about designing a decolonized mega dungeon, and someone
Right.
was like, "Well, you can do all this in D&D," and I'm like, "Yeah, no." Like as a person who's played, the various different iterations of D&D, there's some things that D&D does very well and did at various times very well, and there's some things that it just wasn't, you know, good at, which is why all these other systems came
Mm,
into existence because only certain types of behavior became rewarded
mm.
in D&D, right?
Right. And
And
this is
so,
on Substack. So if anyone wants to read it,
yes,
Substack, right?
please come through.
Yeah.
Yep,
Please
please come
go
through.
follow it and
I'm
spend some time
actually
reading
like
it.
I'm really, really committed myself to my Substack, and I'm going to be putting a new article up there every week.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so I've been committing myself on that. I'm also branching out and realizing the other aspects of Substack. They have a note function, a podcast function. I think it's going to be one of the places where I'm really going to, dig my foot down in and everything. Um, but yeah, when it gets back to it, there are some things that D&D was not designed for. And this is why these other systems came into place. So when you play these other systems, you learn different ways to tell stories and you learn ways to emphasize different things. Me playing D&D when I was young, I could not conceive of any other way to play D&D outside of
Right.
doing a dungeon crawl.
That was
Like
it.
yeah, I couldn't, you know,
Right.
to the point that I found difficulty because at the time there were not a lot of city adventures, right? There were not a lot of city adventures that were put out there in the beginning. And one of my issues was that a lot of the fantasy that I was inspired by, or I shouldn't say a lot of it, but two of the major conduits were anthologies that were based in cities. One was, Liavek,
Mm.
and the other one was Thieves World.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here
Thieves
you
World.
have where the setting is a city, but
Yeah.
D&D at that time did not have the mechanics um, to run adventures in the city.
Yeah, people just hadn't
So
figured it out. I mean, there was, I think,
right,
in Greyhawk, there's like the primary. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's like that primary city, but there are no details, and the whole point of it is for you to find an adventure that takes you out of the city.
yes, exactly, exactly, and that's what literally cities became. Cities
Mm,
became places where you renewed your resources,
mm,
right? Where you sold your wares. Um,
mm,
But in terms of the major bulk of the adventures, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't designed for that. Like things
mm,
have clearly changed now. We're in different era and stuff now, but these other systems definitely can give you insight. Like this system, I will tell you, it will give you insight on how to run a layered campaign. I'm talking specifically for D&D. It will give you insight on how to run a layered campaign. It will give you insight on how to run a Byzantine type campaign. It will give you, tremendous insight on how to, you know, connect all these things together.
mm.
I'm not saying that you couldn't find that on your own in D&D, but they've done such a well job at illustrating it here that you can also use it as a classroom, you
Mm,
know.
for sure. Uh, Thank you so much for coming on and going through all this. It's having someone who is passionate and knowledgeable about a system like this is the best way to communicate, I think. And I really appreciate you coming on and going through all this and sharing your knowledge with it, I think. And like you said, at the very least, even if you don't play Spire, this will inspire you, hopefully, you the listeners, to think a little bit more and a little bit more outside the box about what your D&D campaign is. If you absolutely insist on playing D&D, that's fine, but there's so much you can be doing with it, and here is the prime example. So yeah, thank you again so much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to the next. We've got a couple other things on the schedule coming up. We've got, we could add heart to the list. We could come back and go through heart, but we got a couple other things coming up. So I'm
Okay, I
looking
have a
forward to
confession.
seeing you again soon.
I
And
have a
yeah,
confession.
thank you.
I,
Yeah,
ju- I
what's
just
that?
I just ordered the bundle for Heart.
Oh, there you go. All right. All right. All right. There it is. All right. Well, we'll let you cook for a while, and then when you're ready, yeah, let's do some heart. All right. Thank you,
All
sir.
right. Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
You also.